Chapter 391 Changing Morals. You are listening at novelfull.audio. By the time Max hobbled to the front lines, the battlefield had become a mess. Benoel dem there was fire and blood everywhere, as one could witness with their bare eyes the true horrors of war. As a human with morals from Earth, Max wondered if his ambition was the cause behind the death and misery of hundreds of thousands and their families, but as he looked for answers around he found nobody who regretted fighting in this war. The vampires with their red eyes were all consumed with bloodlust, even those who had been severely injured fought with such valor and gusto that it made one wonder if they were possessed. The stronger warriors laughed and enjoyed the fight, reveling in the carnage, letting out their true destructive natures seep out, while the weaker ones were scared and terrified as they only fought to retreat and not to kill. If this were a game and death was not real, nobody would judge his moral choices for war. After all, the entire planet Earth participated in Omega, fighting, killing monsters, NPC and players alike. Nobody criticized his brother for the number of large-scale wars he fought in Omega, but rather hailed him as the greatest and the best, because when everything was said and done and there was a monarch sitting on the throne willing to uphold law and order, the number of lives that stability saved was much greater than the lives lost. There was no virtue to non-violence if one was not capable of violence. Only when one was sufficiently dangerous could she become a deterrent to others to start a war. If there was no vampire monarch, if there was no clan system, such death and destruction would be a daily routine, not just for the soldiers, but for the civilians as well. Only because Regus Aurelius was on the throne, did no other faction dare set their eyes upon vampire planets, and the common citizens of the monarchy were free to choose from the million non-war-related professions to lead a normal life. A soldier was prepared for death, their families knew that they might never return, which did not make death any easier on them, but saved Max some moral dilemma. Chain heal, chain heal, chain heal. Max spammed chain heal to help his injured soldiers recover. As their wounds began to heal, and their HP rose, the soldiers looked around to see which healer had just joined the party, only to see their captain Raven supporting them from the sidelines. "Captain's here. Captain has come back victorious," the men shouted, cheering each other on as Max's presence helped raise morale. For the next 3 hours, not once did Max raise his hand to kill an enemy or injure an opponent, as he played the role of a true support class, healing his men, creating rain to quell dragon fire where enemies had been wiped out, and using fire wall to help block some attacks. The rebel army under Sebastian and Asiva's lead, blew through sectors 11 through 1, before assembling around the inner district, the residential area of the current lord and the uppermost echelons of society, as the majority of Dombivli fell into rebel control. For 3 hours, the remnant human inside Max slowly died a slow death as he passed past the carnage and devastation without feeling an ounce of pity, as if all this were natural. Faced with these feelings of indifference, Max finally understood that his psyche had changed from a law-abiding citizen to a true primordial vampire. Chuckling, Max looked at Anna as he said, "Do you wish to do the honors, or should I?" In response, Anna only pulled back her elven bowstring as an arrow with concentrated mana energy magically appeared on it. Explosion shot, Anna shot the arrow towards the gate of the inner city, blowing them open as the rebel army cheered, storming into the playground of the elite to settle the war. Meanwhile, Roy and Keen Kingsman, "Brother, hurry, we need to flee. We need to get out before they storm the palace. The city has fallen, Uncle Farid is dead, if we stay here longer we might be dead too." Keen Kingsman urged his brother, who looked like he had just lost a part of his soul. "My throne," Roy said wistfully, as he did not wish to abdicate his position and his powers. "Brother, let's go. Let's take everything we can from the inventory and flee, there is no time for us to be dazed," Keen urged Roy as he pulled him by his hand through the guarded chambers towards the royal treasury. "Open it. Open the treasury gate," Keen urged the guards, who opened it at once, but to Keen's absolute horror, there were only a few skill scrolls and artifacts inside but no gold. "Where is the money? We should at least have 15 billion gold coins as reserve. What happened to the money?" Roy asked the guards, who were equally perplexed. "Lord, the military took it out, every last bit of it. it was authorized by you, the guard said as Roy recalled the flashback where he signed the documents giving his uncle free reign over the royal treasury. At that moment, his brother Keen had repeatedly warned him to not fall for this scam, to always approve purchase requests one at a time, but Roy dismissed his concerns as useless. Brother. We're broke, even if we get out of here, we will be fugitives and live life as peasants, Roy said gloomily as he laughed in a self-deprecating laughter. Brother, we still have some artifacts and scrolls, don't lose heart, we can sell them for a few million, it's enough to start a new life, trust me, I'll take care of us, Keen said trying to sound upbeat as he collected every last object that he could from the treasury. As the two princes fled, the royal guard who had watched over the treasury for 2 decades wondered what would be the outcome of this war, if the younger brother Keen was the lord and not the muddle-headed Roy. /////A/N. Chapter 3340, Day 9 starts /////. Chapter 392 Victory. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Rovan was a prideful Kingsman clan soldier. After he surrendered Jianmi planet, he fell back to Dombivli to aid the clan in the inevitable final showdown. However, he was reduced to the duty of a royal guard since the other commanders did not trust him enough to take him to the battlefield. Rovan could not help but sigh at this situation. The only reason why he peacefully surrendered to Max on Jianmi was because he did not want needless slaughter of his men. The situation there was hopeless, which was the only reason why he surrendered. He himself was not afraid of death and would gladly lay down his life for the clan if need be. Unfortunately, his loyalty was misunderstood. Just because he was not foolhardy to lead all of his men to death, he was ostracized by his own people. When Rovan was requested by the 2 young princes to help them flee the planet, Rovan felt his blood boil at the cowardice, but he did not show it as he loyally completed his duty of escorting them to the teleportation center before the enemy soldiers could capture them. He himself did not run away, as regardless of the lord which ruled it, this was the planet where he was born, and these were the people he wanted to serve. For 7 years of his life, he faithfully served the Kingsman clan. However, except for Will Kingsman, nobody was worthy of his loyalty. The princes for whom his men died on Jianmi, and the countless soldiers fought today in Dombivli, ran away like cowards without ever lifting a sword at the enemy. They were not men worthy of his respect. Instead he could not help but admire Raven. The man led his army from the front lines, fought shoulder to shoulder with his men, often picking the most dangerous opponents for himself, while shielding his people from harm. He was a leader worth following and Rovan wanted an opportunity to serve him. Making up his mind, he walked out of the teleportation center and looked at the straggling royal guards fight against the overwhelming number of rebel soldiers. Decisively making his decision, Rovan shouted, "Kingsman soldiers. This is Strongman Rovan speaking, the Lord, Roy Kingsman and his brother have already fled the planet. Our struggles are for nothing, with Commander Farid and other strongmen dead, I am the highest ranking officer in the military now and I see no point in continuing this fight, when the Lord we are fighting for has fled. I urge Captain Raven to accept our peaceful surrender and to my brothers to lay down their arms." Bedo under his shout, all fighting ceased momentarily, as his words resonated with many soldiers. The rebel soldiers waited for Raven's orders, while the royal soldiers threw down their weapons and raised their hands in surrender. Understanding full well that further fighting was unnecessary, Max accepted the surrender as he shouted, "We accept." Deafening cheers spread across the entire city. The war was officially over and the rebel forces were victorious. The rebel soldiers hugged each other and screamed at the top of their lungs, feeling accomplished at achieving their goal, while the Kingsman soldiers smiled bitterly as they cursed their cowardly lords who had fled. It was not clear who originated it, but the crowd broke out into a very popular vampire song, as they happily raised Captain Raven over their shoulder and began dancing towards the palace. Max was passed over from shoulder to shoulder of his men, as they brought him to the palace in absolute grand fashion. As the rebels stormed the place, the royal guards all bowed their heads as they gave Max their salute, preparing a guard of honor for his entry. Max personally was extremely tired, every corner of his body ached, however, an incredibly big smile was plastered behind his mask as he could not help but feel on top of the world this moment. As he glanced around, he saw Severus dancing without a care in the world at the front of his convoy, while the rebel soldiers repeatedly tossed Sebastian in the air as if he were some catch ball, as the little dwarf laughed his heart out. Eventually, the rebel soldiers stormed the courtroom, packing the place to the brim, as they only left a narrow passage for Max to walk to the throne seat. Ha 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 ha! Max laughed as he looked at the seat that was now his across the hall, taking slow steps towards it as he relished every moment of this walk. He could feel his heart beat rapidly, as endorphins were released in his blood. This was his seat. He had earned the right to sit there. Eventually Max reached the throne seat, as he rubbed his hands softly around the golden edges and audibly chuckled out loud the feeling he had today. Touching the throne was just like buying a first car, only 1,000 times better. Oh, the soldiers hyped Max, and urged him to take a seat, as after soaking in the feeling until he was satisfied, Max finally turned and sat on the throne. The soldiers cheered and jumped and laughed. This was a moment of great pride and joy for them as well, as their captain, the man who had led them to this glory, had finally taken his position at the helm. All hail Lord Raven, the rising star of the vampire monarchy, the ruler and protector of Dombivli City, Gianni, Wet Planet, Grey House Planet and Paradis Capital, Rovan shouted, as at that moment everyone in the throne room said in unison, Hail Hail, as everyone bent the knee. XXXX End of Volume 5. The Lordship. XXXX //////A/N. The war sequence comes to an end, as we shift from the war phase of the book to the kingdom building phase. I sincerely hope you enjoyed this volume of the story, as I wish to see you all in Volume 6. The Fall of the Mighty ////. Chapter 393 A New Day. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Once the adrenaline rush wore off and the fatigue finally caught up, it was already a new day inside Dombivli City. The less injured soldiers were patrolling the streets as martial law was imposed and news was delivered to every household that there had been a change in power. A camp was opened for the more injured soldiers as their many regained their strength after being fed with countless health potions and medical aid. The Docking Bay area, Sector 11, Sector 13 and Sector 7 were the areas where the impact of the war was most severe, and a rubble collection team was headed by Severus in those areas, so that the roads could be cleared up and reconstruction efforts could start. When everything was said and done and the losses were tallied, a staggering 250,000 rebel soldiers had lost their lives in this war, while 375,000 Kingsman soldiers were dead. The total death count was so severe, some dead vampires had to be stacked over one another as they were buried as per vampire tradition in a massive graveyard. The Kingsman clan had lost almost all of its Tier 4 warriors, with only 23 remaining, while they only had one Tier 5 strongman left in Rovan. The rebel forces lost 120 Tier 4 warriors and 2 destroyer battleships in this fight, of which 30 belonged to the lone soldiers from Titus clan. When the losses were tallied, 60,000 of the Titus clan lone soldiers had lost their lives as the total war indemnity that Max was contractually obligated Vega to pay for their deaths came to a staggering 580 million gold coins. Having lost 2 destroyer battleships worth roughly $1 billion gold coins each, the losses were exaggerated even more, and to make the matters worse, the royal treasury was empty to its core with not even a single skill scroll left behind. Angakok's summoning by the clone had left Max with an unbelievable amount of debt in mana, which according to Max's calculations was easily going to cost him 2.5 billion gold coins to finance. If Max added the reconstruction costs and the income needed to maintain the army, he found that he was in grave need of money and that the war had burnt a massive hole in his finances. When the After-War Council convened, and Max was made face to face with the economic situation of the 5 planets he controlled, Max realized that he had inherited a territory made out of glass. He needed to make a lot of money and fast, because otherwise he was going to lose control over the newly acquired regions. Having barely slept for a few hours, and having drunk only a few liters of blood, Max was in no way his peak form, but he still needed to work in overdrive, setting up meetings with the previous administration officers, the merchants' union, the municipal union, the religious leaders and the 100 other factions who wanted some of his time. He had to do all this, while solving the money crisis and coming up with new administration laws. Simultaneously he had to get in touch with the vampire monarch's office at Ixtal and plan for his coronation ceremony to make his status as a new clan leader official. Looking at the mountain of work that needed to be done after the war, Max suddenly felt like he was sick and needed a vacation, as he was in no mental state to face such mundane and stressful work at the moment. Unfortunately for him, being a lord did not just mean leading his men from the forefront. More often than not it was the mundane work that made one a great leader and not the flashy work. Meanwhile Julian read the battle report of Dombivli with great interest. The events where Max Rajput took down the Tier 6 Rose Medici was extremely shocking to Julian, as the methods employed in the fight were moves and phenomenons that he had never heard in his entire life. This further strengthened his conviction that Max and Raven were definitely different people, as there was no way that a Tier 3 Captain Raven could ever hope to fight against the god. Also, the clear absence of fire-based attacks that were used often by Raven and corresponding use of secret moves that even he was unaware about helped Julian conclude that Max Rajput, like his brother, was a terrifying existence who needed to be monitored. What was equally impressive was the report on how Raven reportedly single-handedly took down 3 Tier 5 opponents, as while there were no eyewitnesses of the fight, people had seen the 3 of them chasing after Raven to some obsolete corner, before Raven returning back from the fight alone and victorious. With no other soldier claiming to have interfered in any way, and Raven having confirmed that he did kill the 3 of them in an intense battle, the credit of the kills was given to him. But it did make readers like Julian curious as to how he achieved such an impressive feat. The report also said that the failure of the air defense systems and the betrayal of Christian Grey proved to be the masterstrokes by the rebel army that gave them the opportunity to fight on a level playing field. Whereas the entry of the 2 Tier 4 dragons who breathed fire on the enemy from the skies proved to be the edge they needed to sweep through for victory. What concerned Julian the most, however, was the fact that Max Rajput had mysteriously vanished from the battlefield once his part in the war was over and had not been spotted in the subsequent celebrations and cleaned up. Having become a revered figure amongst the rebel troops, Commander Max was extremely sought out in the after-party, but the only reply Raven gave for his absence was that he had long left to tend to his more important matters. This behavior made Julian curious about Max Rajput as a whole, the man which no intel organizations had solid reports about and whose true strength was unknown. /////A/N. Chapter 3540, almost done for the day. ///// Chapter 394 Regis's reaction. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Regis Aurelius's POV. When Regis Aurelius received the war report, he was absolutely calm regarding the outcome. Having a lot of experience in the military, Regis knew a brilliant soldier when he saw one. Raven in his mind was one such brilliant soldier. If the odds were not overwhelmingly against him, he was a man who could prepare an excellent strategy to win any war, hence Regis had long expected him to emerge victorious. What angered him, however, was the collusion of the Kingsman clan with the outlaws the Medici. The Medici were cancerous to the vampire society, they preferred in-breeding over cross-breeding and had psychological issues. Regardless of his personal feelings for the rebel army, their feat of killing the outlaw Medici god was praiseworthy in Regis's eyes, and as a monarch he was going to make sure that this contribution did not go unrewarded. To ensure that such matters were not repeated, he would also criminalize giving shelter to Will Kingsman's sons, declaring them traitors of the clan, while also sending the Aurelius forces to the Medici planet to give them a stern reminder on not interfering with the vampire monarchy. On a personal level, he was a little pissed that he had to confer the title of Lord to the upstart Raven, as although there was no way in hell he was going to personally attend the ceremony, he still had to sign the declaration conferring the title to the boy. From now on, the brat was a part of the system, and that made it easy for Regis to control him. On the other hand, it also made it simpler for the brat to make his life uncomfortable, but while Regis was confident about Raven's skill as a general, he was also sure that the boy had no talent for politics. In Regis's eyes, the boy was soon going to receive a reality check when he stepped onto the political stage, as the matters on that stage were not settled by brute force but rather deceit and diplomacy, traits that soldiers often lacked. Having spent centuries perfecting his diplomatic skills, Regis was perfectly aware of how to make the boy's life a living hell while still being within the confines of the system, as this was the only reason why he quite looked forward to conferring the title to the boy. "Let the games begin," Regis said with a smile as he tossed the war report aside. Meanwhile, Patricia, one night. It had been a while since Patricia had visited the Rajput mansion on Radiance, but today she found an excuse to do so. A certain broadcast stream had gone viral amongst the Earth settlers on Radiance, where the prodigy Max Rajput was seen dueling a god with great ease. Patricia had personally seen that video, and if the face were blurred and someone told her that this was Rudra Rajput fighting against an enemy and not Max, she would immediately believe it. The strength that Max had shown when finishing off a god could not be ignored, as he had not broken a sweat throughout the battle. Such power had to be taken note of, as individuals at tier 6 or similar strength level were the backbones of any monarchy, and since Max showed the potential to become such a pillar or maybe even reach the heights of his brother, he needed to be made a very important state asset. After this fight, Patricia had no doubt in her mind that countless organizations would be trying their best to rope Max in, and to do her duty as patriarch of the One Night family, Patricia was visiting the Rajput mansion, as she knew that a few words to Max from Naomi would all but confirm his loyalty to the One Night clan. Although the reason behind her visit was not simple, the moment she entered the mansion and saw the little kids running around, she could not help but melt by their cuteness, as inside them she saw the face of her dead brother Rudra. For the first hour of her visit, Patricia completely forgot about her position as a god and a patriarch as she played with the children and drew with crayons alongside them. It was only when the kids went for their afternoon nap that she did start discussing business with Naomi and Ruby. "Patricia, Max's return to the war stage has created quite the stir. He's grown in strength quickly after Shikani's death. You must be proud." Naomi: "Well, I don't care how powerful he becomes, to be honest. I just hope he's safe and happy. I've already lost my husband and don't wish to lose the only man in the house too. Although you can argue that he's never in the house anyways." Ruby: "I'm more worried about Anna, the way she was looking at him from a distance in that video. I'm 99% sure she's fallen for him. Her personality is exactly like mine. She's bound to be attracted to men who often play with danger." Patricia pursed her lips at this conversation. It was going in a completely different direction than what she wanted to steer it towards. Patricia: "I'm more worried about what organization he will choose to join in the future. I've received reports that quite a lot of people want to recruit him. His future potential is limitless, and everyone and their mothers can see that. Let's hope he is not led astray." Naomi: "What organization do you think he should join? I'll advise him about this the next time he visits home." Ruby: "My dad can use his help. He's very reliable too." Patricia: "Well, there's always room for him at the One Night family as well. After all, Rudra was also a One Night, and we can definitely take care of his brother." Naomi: "Perfect. This way he will also stay closer to home." Ruby: "Yes. He can come play with his nephew and niece more often if he's deployed here." Naomi: "Yes, we must ensure he joins Patricia. We need to make a plan." Patricia watched calmly as Rudra's two wives discussed plans to convince Max. Eventually she smiled as she understood that her work here was done. //////A/N Chapter 36 of 40, End of Day 9 ///// Chapter 395 Felix Aurelius. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The next day, 2 days after the war, the curfew on Dombivli city finally ended and an interim government took power. Max quickly appointed people he trusted to positions of power within his government, with all his friends holding important government offices. The locals who he promoted to minister positions were all forced to sign a stringent system contract and were informed that their positions could change at any given moment based on their performance. Max wished to create a semi-democratic form of government, so that internal politics checked and balanced itself while completely separating the military with civil affairs. In Max's system, he solely held the supreme power in the clan, which he could use to mobilize the army, pardon criminals and sentence any traitor to death. He could withdraw any amount of money from the treasury and could decide the allotment of resources at will. Only by his signature can any amendment become official law, and while the parliament needed his signature to pass a bill, he did not need the parliament's permission to pass any reforms that he deemed necessary. Apart from him, not one person had so much power in the entire government. The commander in charge of the military could only handle affairs of the military. The trade minister could only look over trade and merchant unions and so on. In total, Max established 6 major ministries to run the internal administration. They were the Ministry of Internal Affairs headed by Anna. Ministry of Foreign Affairs headed by Sebastian. Ministry of Healthcare and Sanitation headed by Severus. Ministry of Trade and Commerce headed by Christian Grey. Ministry of Finance headed by a local. Ministry of Urban and Rural Development headed by another local. Apart from these ministries, there was a Ministry of Defense, which was an all-encompassing ministry which decided military budget, salary, law and order etc. headed by a Saiva. In the future, Max wished for all these ministries to be headed by locals and wanted to open many subdivisions of these ministries, but for now he decided on this rough structure to proceed. The current priority was the economy and the refilling of the royal treasury, as the 2.5 billion gold coin stash of Farid was barely able to keep the army costs afloat after the war. With only 8 days to repay Engikok's mana debt, Max needed to raise money in fast. To do so, he gave Christian the free rein to do any and every form of trade exploitation in the next 8 days, but to help him raise at least 1 billion in gold coins. On the other hand, Max had to send Sebastian to tour different clans and invite them to his official coronation ceremony, while trying to bring foreign direct investment to alleviate some of the internal troubles. Meanwhile, Roy and Keen Kingsman were initially promised asylum in the Caesar clan. However, upon their arrival at the subsidiary planet controlled by the clan, they were quickly arrested in a shocking betrayal. The moment Regis's mandate rolled out declaring them traitors of the state, Julian cut off all ties with them and ordered them to be arrested. Roy Kingsman cried and screamed at the injustice. However, there was nothing he could do to overturn this situation. No longer having any political power, any economic power and any personal power, Roy and Keen Kingsman were in no position to negotiate terms of their release. They were captives of the Caesar clan, and were awaiting trial by the Aurelius court on Ixtal. After understanding the charges they were arrested with, Keen tried to explain his side of the scenario, that he and Roy had no idea that their uncle was colluding with Medici clan and that if they were aware they would never have let it happen, but his pleas fell on deaf ears, as despite being innocent of the collusion, his punishment had been already decided. Put in a dark jail cell, Keen and Roy Kingsman regretted being born in this cursed world, as their spirits truly hit a rock bottom. Jingle jingle, wake up dogs, someone is here to see you. The prison guard said as Keen Kingsman stirred from his sleep to look at who had come to visit him. Roy did not even bother lifting his head, as he had long given up on life once he was forced to sleep on this slimy dirt-covered rock that the prison guards called a bed, and given bread that tasted like dog shit for dinner. A slender young man with a black robe walked into the prison cell, but due to the overall darkness his face was barely discernible. "Smells horrible here, doesn't it?" the man said in a half-manly half-boyish voice. "Who are you, what do you want?" Keen asked in a hoarse voice, being very skeptical of the unknown individual's intentions to visit the brothers after the betrayal of the Caesar clan. "I'm Felix Aurelius, son of monarch Regis Aurelius, prince of all vampires. I'm here because I have a mission for the two of you. In return for officially making you disappear and giving you a second chance at life, I want you to do a task for me. If you choose to accept, I can get you out of this hole today, else tomorrow you face trial inside the Aurelius court, and trust me when I say this. The verdict has already been decided, you shall be hanged, Felix said as Roy Kingsman finally stirred from his slumber to look at the vampire prince. My prince, both Roy and Keen Kingsman kneeled, as they showed Felix the proper respect before mulling over the offer for a few seconds and agreeing quickly. Life had placed the Kingsman brothers at the absolute rock bottom, since there was nowhere more to fall, they might as well try rising from the ashes again. What do we need to do? Keen asked as Felix smiled a wicked smile. //////n. Chapter 37 of 40, The Last Day. I've started late today because I'm extremely sleep deprived and accidentally slept during the day /////. Chapter 396 Not to be trifled with. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After Marcus Aurelius was removed from his position as crown prince, the floodgates were opened to the succession war. Every small clan aligned themselves with one of the two princes, and foreign institutions were no different. One such institution was the Red Umbrella Group, which on the surface looked like an excellent talent development group which focused on training beautiful masseuses and receptionists for any businesses, but every adult male in the vampire monarchy knew that they were a prostitution ring. On a personal level, Regus Aurelius was disgusted by such business practices. However, the leader of the Red Umbrella was his wife's sister, which is why he turned a blind eye to their operations in exchange for large sums of money donated to the Aurelius clan every year. The Red Umbrella Group operated on every major vampire planet, having centers in all 36 major clans, and were the second most proficient information-gathering organization after the St. Maximus clan. Not only did they have proof of the incriminating lifestyle of various influential figures, but they were known to dabble in assassination from time to time. In the succession war, the Red Umbrella Group had chosen to sponsor Felix Aurelius, hoping that with his rise to the throne they would be able to legalize their business and expand rapidly. To do so, they invested 40 billion gold coins into strengthening Felix's position, buying the loyalty of those who could be bought, and seducing the others into doing their bidding. The biggest secret of the Red Umbrella Group was their sex change potion, which upon consumption changed men into women. While the common public was not aware of these practices, some of the best performing individuals of the Red Umbrella Group were ex-males who understood the art of pleasuring fellow males better than any woman ever could. The potion was a big reason behind the handjob service of the Red Umbrella Group to be considered as divine, as the ones servicing other men with big smiles and feminine faces were actually dudes who had serviced their own parts for years of their life. Naturally, the customers were unaware. The opportunity that Felix Aurelius had presented to Roy and Keen involved them taking this very sex-change potion, as the Red Umbrella wished to train them into the ultimate noble women who could service the noble customers. At first Roy and Keen were horrified by this offer, as Roy threatened to kill himself rather than live this way. However, as he wanted to back out, he was put under a brainwash spell and forced to consume the potion. The one-balled Kingsman brothers lost their single ball, as well as after consuming the potion their mano-parts withered away from their body like dry leaves withered from a tree branch, and instead new anatomical parts grew. Roy and Keen were dead after the procedure, as Roya and Kinna were born. The mission assigned to Roya and Kinna being to increase their charm and their tier before the next dungeon run in the coming years. Felix Aurelius had played the long game by converting these two into women, as while he could have brought any vampire woman to join the Red Umbrella Group, only a noble-blooded vampire belonging to an official clan's bloodline could enter the dungeon. Their usefulness for him was not today, but at the time they entered the dungeon. Meanwhile Hazriel, your chosen, is doing quite well. Hazriel, I'm sure you received news of his legendary battle feats. Archangel Michael, the King of Heavens, said as he addressed his younger sister. It's nothing much, his road is long, Hazriel said while suppressing a smile. You said you will be attending his crowning ceremony. May I ask the reason why a Tier 8 Archangel shall descend from the heavens to personally attend this ceremony? Michael asked in a teasing voice, despite already knowing the answer. I need to give him the final nudge. He has already accumulated a lot of karmic value and hence I'm unable to peer into his destiny anymore. I'm not even sure if his fate has changed or not, but the time for the last nudge that I had long foreseen that he would need has finally come, and I intend to give it to him," Hazriel said with a straight face as she did not give Michael the satisfaction of teasing her. "Are you sure he will listen to you? He is Angekok's chosen, does he even need a guardian angel anymore when he has that freak supporting him?" Michael asked with a slight frown on his face as he remembered the troublesome matter of Angekok. "He will. He genuinely believes in me, sometimes at night I can hear his pure-hearted prayers. I don't intend to disappoint him," Hazriel said with conviction as she made the mistake of looking into her brother's mischievous eyes at this moment, which made her subconsciously crack up into a laugh. "Our teacher has also looked into that boy's fate, he said it is intertwined with yours. According to him there is a probability that you and Max will one day be sitting on a tree k.s.s.i.n.g, Michael said in the most funny way possible as Hazriel blushed in a deep red. "Shut up," she protested weakly, however her emotions had already betrayed her true feelings. "You already swoon over him, Hazriel, half your day is spent tracking his progress. Shikani's kind has a word for angels like you, it's called stalker," Michael said seriously, fulfilling his duty as Hazriel's elder brother in teasing her. Covering her ears, Hazriel pretended to not listen anything as Michael laughed heartily seeing her so flushed. Only after 2.3 minutes of heavy laughing did he finally stop and become serious as he said, "Pass on a message from me to Max while you are there, Hazriel, tell him, that the next time he communicated with Angekok, he needs to remind the old god that he is not the only individual in the universe with a tier 10 treasure at his disposal. That the angels are not to be trifled with, that his act of brazenly kidnapping Varun has not gone unnoticed." // Chapter 38 of 40, almost there / Chapter 397 Historic Tale. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 5,000 years ago. At the end of the Chaos Era. The ancient battlefield, 5 warriors faced off against one another in the ancient battlefield to conclude the mega war that had engulfed the entire universe. These were the 5 warriors who had broken past the shackles of Tier 8 and had the power of a pseudo-Tier 9 celestial, each wielding a Tier 10 treasure. They were the 5 absolute strongest amongst the most powerful gods in the entire universe, but alas, fate made it so that only one of them could become a true full celestial and escape to the higher realm. Ever since the 10 universal treasures were thrown down from the celestial world to the mortal universe, the darkest period of war and instability embroiled the universe as blinded by greed and power, every god fought for these treasures to have the opportunity to step up to the grandest stage. The participants of this mega fight were the god of fire, Agni, the god of wind, Vayu, the god of illusions, Maya, the god of thunder, Indra, the sun god, Surya. At his peak, Agni was so powerful that with a single attack he could incinerate entire planets. Labeled as the most destructive god, he was an extremely feared opponent. The wind god was said to be untouchable. His agility was so high that it was rumored that nobody had been able to land a single scratch on his body throughout the Chaos Era, and battles with him were known for their prolonged nature that heavily depleted one's stamina. The sun god Surya was a tempered fighter who only fought for justice and the betterment of the universe. His only ambition to participate in this grand fight was to become a celestial and put an end to the tyranny of the other gods while ensuring that his descendants, the Suryavanshi clan, became the de facto rulers of the universe. The god of thunder Indra was the god of heaven before the Chaos War and was widely regarded as the strongest god of the universe. His preferred choice of weapon was the Vajra, a medium which helped him channel his lightning powers, while his choice of mount was the mythical white elephant who was a Tier 8 creature himself. The god of illusions, Maya, was someone who nobody anticipated to be at this fight stage. He was not strong like the others, even his most destructive attacks could barely destroy a city. However, the mind games he played made him the most detested opponent amongst all 5. For 14 days and 14 nights, the 5 of them had an intense battle that completely ravaged the entire ancient battlefield. The fight between them seemed to be approaching nowhere as despite the heavy fighting, nobody seemed to have been pushed to their limits. To break the stalemate, Maya suggested a temporary truce to Agni and Vayu. In a temporary truce, Maya wanted Agni and Vayu to become his muscle power as he trapped Indra and Surya in his illusionary world for them to kill them off. The fire god and the wind god agreed and entered the illusionary world where Maya had trapped Indra and Surya, but as the four of them faced each other inside the illusionary world they quickly realized that Maya had been playing both sides. The same offer that the god of illusions had proposed to Agni and Vayu he had also done to Indra and Surya, as playing both sides he sealed them in the illusion world. The seal he placed on them was peculiar, it did not allow their physical bodies to escape, but allowed their spiritual bodies to leave. For 100 years the four gods tried to force their way out of the seal, before their powers began to wane and they were forced to make tough choices. Fusing their souls and remnant wills with their favorite weapons, they used the power of the Tier 10 treasures to enhance the grade of the weapons to reach that of a true Tier 9 stage before scattering them throughout the universe in hopes that someday, someone worthy enough would collect all fragments of that weapon and help them avenge Maya's betrayal. Although they were not sure if their physical bodies would live to see the day or not, they were sure they would hold out for as long as it was godly possible. 5,000 years later. Drax was the AI which was mixed with Agni's remnant will. Despite the long separation it remembered its creator's last words as clear as day, and was waiting for the day he could oversee Max's development to kill Maya. Initially, it was never supposed to fuse with a Tier 0 trash like Max. Anyone coming into contact with the Agni, Astra was supposed to die a horrible death if Drax did not judge them to be worthy enough. However, since Max was a manaless trash, the bracelet was unable to kill him with the remnant fire god's mana which was lethal to anyone under Tier 6. In the most weird turn of events, Drax was forced to fuse with Max and patiently wait till he developed enough to shoulder the responsibility of Agni's revenge, but while the start of their relationship was absurd, over time Drax had grown fond of the boy. In no way shape or form was Max perfect, but Drax had seen the boy grow with his own eyes from the stumbling bumbling teenager to a true ferocious warrior. Every day that Max fought in the mirror world, Drax could not help but be amazed at his skills which would even put the god Agni to shame at the same tier, as slowly but surely Drax became convinced that someday Max was going to be able to shoulder the responsibility of the fire god's revenge. At first that day seemed to be in the distant future, but with Max's rapid development, Drax believed that he might hit Tier 6 in the next 5 years, after which he could finally reveal the secret of the death of the mighty fire god. //////n, Chapter 39 of 40, let's go. /////. Chapter 398 A request you are listening at novelfull.audio. Max's POV, Max stared at the beautiful starry sky of Dombivli City as Asiva slept naked in his arms. Although he did not particularly like Will Kingsman at all, he had to appreciate his taste for bedroom architecture, having a beautiful glass opening in the ceiling just above his bed, that allowed him to see the starry sky at night from the comfort of his own mattress. After an especially hectic week, this was the first time he and Asiva had the chance to spend quality time together as the passion in the bed today was unreal as a result. While Max's mind was rejuvenated and empty after the intense session, the tired Asiva's mind worked in overdrive as it worried about 100 small things. Max, Asiva said softly as she snuggled deeper into his arms, rubbing her nose against his chest as she tried to find comfort in his strong body frame. Max only smiled as he pulled her in for a tight cuddle, but did not say anything. "Marry me, Max," Asiva murmured as she hid her face completely, half expecting Max to hear it and react positively, while hoping that he would not respond at all and pretend like he never heard her say it if he wished to respond negatively. Sure, when?" Max said as he chuckled, making a joke out of the situation. "I'm serious," Asiva said, as she looked into his eyes with a teary look as Max realized that this time she was absolutely serious. What happened to you today? Why so emotional all of a sudden?" Max asked Asiva as he did not understand the reason behind her sudden outburst of emotions, nor did he realize her sudden insistence on getting married. Max had long promised Asiva that the two of them will marry one day, but it was a promise for the future and not something he had planned in the foreseeable months. Asiva heard Max's question, as her heart bled to reply to him as she had no way to justify her insecurity without appearing clingy, but she also felt like if she did not express herself then it would gnaw her from the inside out. Biting her lips she said, "I see the way Anna looks at you, I see the way Mira looks at you, I'm not dumb Max, if it were up to me I'd never share you with any woman. But these days I feel it's becoming more and more impossible for me to expect monogamy from you. Your brother was not monogamous, he had 2 wives and they seem to be reasonably happy with each other. Anna and Mira mean a lot to you, and they do a lot for you, so even though it'll piss me off, I can accept them as your partners given enough time. The only thing I can't accept however will be if you marry one of them before me. I have to be the first wife, the favorite one, always. Otherwise you can have meaningful side chicks." Max heard Asiva's words patiently as he felt a lot relieved after hearing them, but at the same time he could not understand why he was being told such things. He did not see Anna or Mira as a potential mate. "Anna's a friend, Mira's a child. You worry too much," Max said as he gently kissed Asiva on her forehead, but Asiva was not convinced by his words at all. "Do this much for me, please," Asiva said softly as she pleaded with Max to give in to her request. Max looked at Asiva's naked body, and then at the starry sky, and after a minute of contemplation he decided that if it meant so much to Asiva then he could at least do so much if it gave her mental peace. "Okay," Max said with a smile as Asiva's eyes widened at his reply. "You sure?" Asiva asked with a cheery voice as Max nodded and said, "I'm sure, it had to be done someday, so why not this year itself? My only request to you is we do it the traditional Earth way, in a church." Asiva flew in for a passionate kiss as Max said this, as streams of tears flew down her eyes. Just the fact that Max agreed to such a big request without too much thought proved to her that her position in his heart was definitely very high. For her this much was enough, she was not greedy for more. With this promise, she became the happiest woman in the world. Meanwhile, Severus and Sebastian, Max had entrusted the extremely important job of thinking about the new clan name to Severus and Sebastian. The Kingsman clan was no more, and to continue addressing the rebel army as rebels was unappropriated now that Max had ascended to the throne. Rajput clan was out of the question, since Raven's identity was separate from Max. Rajput and Kingsman clan could not be continued to be used for obvious reasons. This left the ever-important job of coming up with a suitable name on the shoulders of the 2 clueless geniuses who Max trusted the most in the world, and the names they had came up so far sounded like this: the Cleanest Clan, the Tallmen Clan, the OP Clan, the Strongest Clan, the Captain's Clan, the Spotless Clan, the Bloodless Clan. Every one of these names was absolutely trash, and the 2 men brainstorming them knew it very well. A clan name was a very important tool of intimidation which needed to match with a clan's prestige and status. The universe trembled at the mention of the Aurelius clan or the One Night clan, and Max's new clan needed to live up to such hype. But what could the perfect name for this clan be? /////A/N. Chapter 40 We did it. We actually did it. Ha ha ha! Thank you everyone who pushed me to reach this goal. To be honest, I had committed to this on a whim and never thought I'd be able to complete it, but your comments and support ensured that I pushed to the finish line. Once again, thank you all ////. Chapter 399 Unexpected Visitor. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Max looked at the list of clan names submitted to him and sighed deeply. It seemed like he had put too much faith in the wrong people for this job, as the names that Severus and Sebastian came up with were absolutely garbage. In Max's mind, he already had 2 names that were his favorite. The first clan name was Skyfall. It sounded very mysterious and powerful, whereas its origins were meaningful. As a child, one of Max's favorite moments where his brother's image as the ultimate hero was established in his mind was when he battled against an entire army alone while assuring the small portion of soldiers behind him that, with him there, the sky won't fall. It was an extremely arrogant statement to make, but his brother had the skills to back it up, as he alone thwarted the advance of over 100,000 troops. Ever since that day, Max wanted to grow up and use that dialogue once, but he never had the confidence or ability to recreate that moment to this day. Now that he had the chance to name his clan, Skyfall seemed like a good option, as he could pass on to his descendants the true meaning of the clan. The second option for his clan name was Bloodforged. It was a name that could strike fear into the enemy's heart while also having a deep symbolic meaning. Max was a true primordial vampire, an individual who was literally wielded the power to forge blood into artifacts, and his future lineage would also inherit this same ability. While he was forced to hide his powers from prying eyes for now, it was not going to be the case forever, as there would be a day where he would proudly march across the universe with his powers on full display. When that day came, Bloodforged seemed like a good name to carry, as his descendants would undoubtedly gain respect of the vampire masses with their surname alone. Just as Max was figuring out which name to choose as his final choice, a servant knocked on his office and informed him that Lucius Aurelius had arrived at Dombivli City. Max raised an eyebrow at this news. He had an impression of the youngest Aurelius prince. As of the three brothers, his senses told him that he was the most dangerous and intelligent. Still a teenager, Lucius was far behind Max in terms of physical powers, but with his backing being the Aurelius clan once he matured enough, Max had no doubt in his mind that he would catch up at an astronomical speed. Tidying up, Max changed into his best robe as he walked out to the council room to greet the visitor. Inside the council room, Max was seated on the throne when Lucius was escorted into the throne room as the young Aurelius bowed in courtesy to Max, who bowed slightly in return. As Lucius was not the crown prince, his standing was slightly lower than Max in the vampire hierarchy, as a clan leader was ranked over the princes, albeit of any clan. If he were a desperate man, Max would have tried to curry favor to Lucius by showing him extreme respect, but Max was prideful and did not wish to kneel to Regus Aurelius if not forced, much less his son. Clan leader Raven, I come today as an envoy of the Aurelius clan to help your smooth ascension as an official clan leader. I will be grateful if you host me for the next 7 days till the ceremony, if not I shall be staying in a motel, Lucius said as Max carefully listened to his words before forming a diplomatic reply. It'll be our pleasure to host the envoy of the Aurelius clan. Naturally the palace is large enough to accommodate you, Max said emotionlessly. Max did not say that it was his pleasure to host the Prince Lucius, but rather used envoy of the Aurelius clan as his wording to make sure that he did not appear favorable to Lucius yet not disrespectful to his position. Might I be permitted to meet with Commander Max? The king has specially rewarded him with 1 billion gold coins for his handling of the situation against Rose Medici, while he has allotted 2 billion gold coins to you for taking down the traitor Kingsman clan who had colluded with outcasts, Lucius said as he tried to judge Max's reaction to his words from the look in his eyes. Damn it, that mask is troublesome, Lucius cursed internally as he could not figure out Max's expressions at all. Thank the monarch for his goodwill, we shall gladly accept the 2 billion gold in reward he allotted to us. As for Commander Max and his reward, I'm afraid I can do nothing about that matter, as the other party is a wanderer and could currently be anywhere in the universe. Although I have a way of contacting him and can pass on the message, as far as I know him, he would not care about petty amounts of 1 billion. You can leave it with us if you trust us enough. We shall pass it on whenever he visits this planet, Max replied diplomatically as Lucius smiled in response. His briefing told him that Raven was not well versed in politics and could be easily manipulated, but his short conversation with the man gave him the feeling that the other party was very restrained and measured every word before he spoke while not leaking emotions. He was the perfect politician and a difficult opponent to tackle. I shall do so then. I shall also pass on to you the declaration that recognizes your reign over 5 planets that you currently control, and a declaration that guarantees that no foreign or local powers can interfere with your sovereign affairs for the next 1 year. If anyone dares attack your lands in the next year, the Aurelius army will come to your aid, Lucius said as he passed on official documents to Max which were signed by the King Regus Aurelius himself. /////A/N A new month, and new goals. We did end the month as position 9 on GT rankings, for which I must thank you all for your support. Woohoo! As promised, I will deliver 10 bonus chapters related to it alongside the pending super gift chapters, but I'll take a day off before resuming those updates, so there will be no chapters tomorrow. Meanwhile, do comment which clan name amongst Skyfall and Bloodforge you want for Max's clan, as usual highest voted option wins /////. Chapter 400 The real reason you are listening at novel full.audio. This is your room my prince, also, the Lord is wondering if you wish to join him for dinner today, the servant said as she showed Lucius his room. Tell the Lord it will be my pleasure to join him for dinner, Lucius replied as he entered the guest bedroom in the palace and closed the doors shut. Once inside, Lucius frowned deeply. In the race to become the crown prince, he was currently taking every chance that he had to make diplomatic connections. According to his information sources, Raven had no inclinations towards him or Felix, which meant that he could be poached or subdued. However, his talks with the man proved to be extremely difficult. Not only was Raven very measured with his words, he deliberately said things in a way where it could be seen he did not particularly favor Lucius, which indicated to the young prince that Raven might not be inclined to support him. Is it because the St. Maximus clan prefers my brother over me? Lucius wondered as based on this information he decided to change his next strategy. The real reason behind Lucius's visit was not to give Max the appropriate documents from his father but to buy Gianni Planet from him while also trying to buy his loyalty in the process. The previous Crown Prince Marcus had made a deal with the then Lord Will Kingsman to explore the ruins of the lost civilization found on the planet while looking for new mining sites. It was a breakthrough discovery on a desolate area of the Gianni Planet, and the exact details of the discovery were kept a very tight secret. The initial estimations of the search found that there might be a thriving civilization on Gianni about 7,000 years ago, which was wiped out by some god in the Chaos-era war, with the ancient city all but lost to the sands of time. Since Gianni was widely unlivable with its red iron-rich soil not suitable to grow plants, it was believed that the planet's only use was to mine iron. However, within the surface about 200 meters underground there was an ancient city with a once thriving ecosystem that could potentially have countless treasures inside. Unfortunately, Will Kingsman's abrupt death and his brother's downfall made it so that nobody was aware of the treasure mine that was Gianni, as Lucius wanted to take advantage of that very lack of knowledge to exploit Raven. Lucius had been lucky to find this planet secret, as after his brother had been ousted from Ixtal, he was allotted his brother's large room in the palace where he found documents related to Gianni and its secret. The entire iron in the planet was worth around 15.20 billion gold coins, which would take at least 30 years to be mined completely. Lucius intended to offer 30 billion gold coins directly to Raven to buy the planet off him, but on second thought he decided to involve Raven in the exploration so as to gain his loyalty and share the spoils of the search while having the risk. Deciding to talk to him about this over dinner, Lucius closed his eyes and began meditating to sharpen his mind. Meanwhile, Max, Asiva Bloodforged or Asiva Skyfall, what do you prefer? Max asked Asiva as he decided that since he was going to marry her, he might as well let her choose her last name. Asiva put her hand on her chin as she contemplated the question carefully before saying, how about we mix them both? In Asiva's mind the story behind Skyfall was beautiful, but the word Bloodforged definitely had more impact. So she decided to take the story aspect of Skyfall and merge it with the badass name Bloodforged and make it Bloodfall Rho Alpha D Alpha N. How about Bloodfall? Asiva inquired innocently as she gauged Max's reaction. The Bloodfall clan, what do you think of that, Grandpa Drax? Max wondered in his head as he consulted the old AI. It's a good name. Its meaning can be translated as your bloodline won't fall and also be translated as if your enemies face you, their blood shall fall. It has both symbolic meaning and a regal aura around it. Since you can't keep your real last name as your clan name like most clans do, I think this option suits your needs the best, Drax said in Max's mind as he greenlighted Max's idea to name his clan Bloodfall. Raven Bloodfall, the king of vampires, Max thought as he gave himself a self-depreciating laughter. Although it had an amazing ring to it, he was far from achieving it at the moment. If you like it, then Bloodfall it shall be, Max said as he grabbed Asiva's slender waist and pulled her in for a kiss. The couple kissed passionately as Asiva enjoyed Max's unwavering warmth and attention, feeling lucky that she had such a loving man by her side. She wanted to escalate things from the kiss, but unfortunately for her someone knocked on the door interrupting the duo. Yes. Max asked loudly, slight anger audible in his voice. Sir. Prince Lucius is ready for dinner, you had agreed to join him, the servant announced as Max sighed deeply. Looking conflicted between the flushed face of Asiva and the door, Max could feel his will being torn between a conflict, but after immense restraint he straightened his robes and said, "We'll be there." Asiva lowered her eyes, slightly disappointed but quickly hid it well. Her boyfriend was also the lord, he needed to tend to his political duties as well. P-Alpha and D-Alpha no. 10 tidying up herself, she followed Max to the dinner hall putting her brightest fake smile on her face befitting of the future mistress of the place. /////A/N Chapter 120. I've decided to settle the bonus chapters for GT Target and the bonus chapters for Super Gifts following the same format as before. 4 chapters a day for the next 5 days to settle it all. Also I went for Bloodfall since I did not want to disappoint anyone /////.